world is changing fast. New technologies are impacting how we think about products, services, and the way we live our lives. Nowhere is this trend more present than in financial services, where new business models and customer expectations are changing our conceptions about banking, finance, and the very nature of money. Welcome to Rebank, a visionary podcast about banking, FinTech, and the future. The future of banking is here. Hello and welcome to Rebank. I'm your host, Will Beeson. Today we're thrilled to be joined by Ricky Knox, founder and CEO of Tandem, a new UK bank that partners with its customers to improve their financial lives. Tandem is at least Ricky's third business. He's also a co-founder of Small World and Azimo. In addition to starting companies, Ricky also invests in them via his investment vehicle, Hexagon Partners. As always, connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or on our website at bankingthefuture.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe on iTunes or your podcast platform of choice and leave us a review. Thank you very much for joining us today. Please welcome Ricky Knox. Ricky, welcome to Rebank.
Thank you very much.
We've had some very esteemed guests in the past, including your business partner, Michael Kent. Had a great chat with him. He went into a fair bit of your guys' backstory, Small World, which the audience should definitely check out. Really interesting stuff. I won't ask you any of the questions about how you guys originally met, just in case the stories conflict. I hate awkwardness, right? But maybe we can kick off with a quick description of Tandem, which is the bank you started.
Sure. So Tandem Bank is a new. We get classed in app only and digital, but we like to think of ourselves as a next generation bank. What we're trying to do is actually help customers very broadly with their lives with money. So delivering a better life with money for our customers. What does that mean? That means actually doing a lot of things, performing a lot of functions that banks don't perform today, helping you optimize your finances, helping you understand what's going on, keeping you on top of it, making it almost zero hassle. And in the long term, Tandem's aiming to be more of a service organization than as banks are today, currently product organizations.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, I'm sure you have some awesome stuff up your sleeves, which I won't ask you to divulge, but are there any, tangible examples conceptually as to what that might mean in terms of customer experience? Like what will Tandem do with a customer, for a customer?
Sure. So, what Tandem does today, which is only a fraction of what it will do in the longer term, is it aggregates all your information from your different account providers, including Tandem. And today you could only have a card with Tandem, which is actually technically a credit card, so it allows you to borrow as well as spend. Fundamentally, there are sort of three main jobs that banks that are currently hired to do by customers today: spend money, put money aside, and give me a little extra money. And with a credit card is conveniently a transactional mechanism that allows you to perform two of those jobs: give me a little extra money and spend money. So for us, that's the vast majority of the banking job done. We're also, but to give you an example, you might aggregate your information. We might spot, something in there, for example, an airplane ticket, and say, hey, look, can we help you out with that holiday, and offer you a range of services around that, whether that be saving, borrowing, insurance, the right card for your travel. And that experience would be very different from your current experience of your bank, i.e., first of all, it's proactive, which is we've spotted the event in your life out of your transaction history or out of other stuff you've told us, or even out of the geolocation of your phone. And then we would create and curate the experience around that to combine various what are currently defined as banking products into an overall service that just basically at the end of you go, shit, Tandem helped me go on holiday, rather than Tandem flogged me a savings account, spanked me with a loan, and hit me over the head with a credit card.
Well, I love that. So basically, you're part of it. Really, it sounds like is kind of expanding banking outside of like the traditional, quote unquote, product set. At least that's the terminology that they use here in banking in the UK, which doesn't really resonate in terms of
doesn't really make any sense.
Banks should talk about the services they provide to customers. But so you're expanding that outside of just saving money and just accessing credit. It's actually pulling in presumably a whole range of services from beyond kind of the walls of a traditional bank, and it's also doing that in a very kind of data heavy and analytics heavy way.
That's right.
Wow. How did the idea for Tandem come about?
So Mike and I, who you've interviewed before, had built a number of money transfer companies, and also invested. We've got a vehicle called Hexagon Partners, invests in FinTech businesses, and been doing so since 2005. And we look pretty broadly across the sort of what was not called FinTech at the time, but what is now called FinTech, across the FinTech spectrum, and we're looking at opportunities and niches and areas where technology would have a profound influence. And as we're sort of scanning across financial services, you can't help but notice, well, or at least 4 years ago, you couldn't help but notice that banking was an area that very few people were innovating in. There were no new entrants, bar Metro, which was really not a technology player, although they were doing a good job of disrupting some of the terrible service that people were receiving. And it sounds like a few people like you had the same idea at the same time. But I got together with Matt Cooper, who I'd known for about 15 years, was one of the founders of Capital One, and Mike and I sat down and said, look, do you think we could build a new bank that leverages the technology that's available today, but that provides what we called a good bank, which basically meant to us a bank that actually helps people live their lives, that actually helps rather than hinders in the management of their finances, helps them do the things that they want to do, that they love to do, without causing extra work and extra inconvenience, which is most of what the banks do today.
Mm-hmm. Do you think your experience with Small World and other financial services companies informed your thinking at all? Were you able to bring some of that experience to bear on the way you went about putting Tandem together?
No, definitely, and probably more Azimo than Small World. At Small World, we'd sort of reinvented the back end of money transfer. At Azimo, we very much invented the whole stack from front end to back end. There was a ton of learning there in terms of in terms of how to build a really effective digital business, but also. I think helpful bits, for example, dealing with regulated industry, where I had the joy of being MLRO for a short period at Small World, but understanding what it means to operate in a regulated context. I think if I hadn't had that experience before, I probably wouldn't have been comfortable to dive into such a heavily regulated sector with little experience of that regulation.
I could fill a day with stories about the banking license application process. You kind of alluded to the new bank that I'm involved in, so I think we've shared a lot of experiences, and indeed we've talked at length about all this. But maybe you can share a bit about what your experience was like going through the PRA and FCA licensing process. And I don't know, I'd be curious to know, for instance, what you say to people when they tell you they're thinking about starting a bank.
I think we've generally had a very good experience with the PRA and FCA. They've been pretty consistent in doing what they said they do. They generally take the timeframes that they said they'd take. Those aren't always the quickest, but it's not in any way easy. So, obviously I've been through a number of other licensing processes, PI, e-money, even in the state by state money transfer licensing, which involves some fantastic old-fashioned fingerprinting, which you have to turn up in person and do with the state regulator. But I would say starting a bank, as Matt puts it, is not for the faint-hearted. There is an awful lot of work and an awful lot of effort to get to the starting line, and there's a danger that you can forget during that process the really important stuff about building a business, which is about talking to customers, about understanding their needs, about making sure that what you're building genuinely solves problems for them. And you can get terribly distracted with all the regulatory stuff and forget to build a good business along the way, which I think part of the problem the banks experience today.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think it's a really good point, like ensuring that you're continuing with potential customer engagement and shaping your proposition in a way that is going to hit the mark with the market, while at the same time kind of responding in a constructive way to a bit of the guidance that the regulator is seeking to give you. I think one of the slightly surprising, perhaps it shouldn't have been in retrospect, takeaways that I had from the process was around kind of the focus on commerciality of what we were doing. I, for whatever reason, assumed that the regulator would only care about your risk management function, your corporate governance, and where you're going to meet your capital and liquidity requirements. But actually, there was a lot of inquiry into the marketing strategy, the business development strategy. How are we going to attract the personnel, the talent that was going to enable us to deliver this? So there was a lot around viability, both commercial viability and kind of operational viability.
Yeah, I mean, I think the prudential, obviously PRA and the FCA, PRA are more interested in viability and sustainability. Ultimately, they want to manage the integrity of the financial system. They'd rather not be licensing people who are then going to go bust. So they want to understand that you're going to make money. And I think one of the really interesting things, our plan and the whole sort of ethos of it very much appealed to the FCA in terms of the, putting the customer first and all that. But the, PRA, moved by that stuff, but less moved and more interested in how are you going to build a business that's ultimately profitable and sustainable.
Yeah. Actually, that must have been interesting, because our model is relatively, I suppose it's kind of reinventing a traditional banking model with very efficient modern technology and a focus on serving customers with a human interface. It's recognizable to the regulators, i.e., they understand what you're doing with your capital. They understand what's going on with your liquidity, with your deposits, with your lending. They more or less understand the business processes, because they're in various ways reflective of what traditional banks have done. Your model being a bit of a departure from traditional banking, very intentionally. I wonder if that was maybe more difficult to perhaps explain at times to the regulators. Did you find that?
Yep. So, particularly with the FCA, I think there were challenges where we were, particularly in the area of advice, where we are quite deliberately looking to be a trusted partner of our customers. We're looking to give them advice. We're looking to recommend products and courses of action, because we feel there is a dearth of advice, and that's one of the things we're addressing as a business. Obviously, you're addressing that in a different way, which is a more familiar way, face-to-face. We're getting algorithms and computers to address the same problem on a digital basis, which was something that they sometimes struggled with, in terms of we had to take them through a lot of individual screens and examples of how those journeys might look before they got comfortable with what we were doing.
So, like all banks that go through the licensing process, Tandem had to surmount a few obstacles. Can you talk about some of the challenges you guys faced in getting where you are and how you overcame them?
Sure. The process overall, and we were talking just before we went on air about, some of the, we went through the same process, which involved the mobilization period. That mobilization period had a good level of demand in terms of to exit mobilization, proving the viability of our systems and their and exactly how they would operate. There's a bit of joy that you've got yet to go through. So that was certainly not an easy period. We've also had ups and downs on the capital raising front, but I'm pleased to say we're past those.
Nice. So there was the highly publicized situation with some potential investors that in the end weren't able to get involved, which for a short period of time, at least externally, looked like it was going to kind of motivate a pivot into a non-bank model. There was then some very interesting news over the summer about the acquisition, subject to regulatory approval, of Harrods Bank. What was the thinking, kind of strategy or business model wise, as that played out? Was it as soon as the initial investment fell through, the next day everyone in the office saying, we are going to be a bank, strategy hasn't changed, we're going to get this figured out, and we saw it a few months later with the Harrods acquisition? Or was there more kind of interim thinking about how can we still be relevant to customers even if we aren't able to launch with a banking license on day one?
More the former than the latter, but you obviously always make contingency plans. But we were very careful. We're at a very advanced stage of progression with a lot of our products and a lot of our product thinking and other stuff. So rather than creating we were very confident we'd had a high level of demand for the original fundraising round, and that we just needed to go time to go back and complete that. So A rather than B, I would say overall, although we definitely ran some scenarios.
So you guys have the live product in the market, which you mentioned before, the aggregator tool. And I don't know, how do you think about the way that specific app fits into the longer term vision of Tandem, i.e. if, say, fingers crossed, the Harrods Bank acquisition is indeed approved by the regulator, how do you expect that the app to then develop?
Yeah, so we were very deliberate in wanting to launch an app that helped customers with their money prior to launching any financial products, because it's pretty central to what we're trying to do for customers, and our primary intent is to help rather than to sell. And so we thought bringing that out first made more sense from a customer perspective. I think we will, and we are in the process of rolling out cards across our existing customer base, which is very exciting. And actually should be some stuff in the news next week. But overall, we think that the app, which is, it's an odd one because the app is obviously your interface with your financial services and products, as well as your interface with your money more generally, is an absolutely essential part of what we do, and will continue to be that. You may choose to use the app more for looking at your card balance and your transactions, or receiving alerts, rather than allowing it to help you with your money and your budgeting more broadly. So to some extent, if you again come back to those jobs that I talked about customers hiring a bank to do, you may find that giving you a medium of payment is a job you hire Tandem more to do, and then it helps you around the edges with the other stuff. And equally, there'll be customers who come in and hire Tandem to help out with their finances, rather than to do one of those sort of three jobs that they hire banks to do today.
I love that terminology that you use, hire bank, because it's effectively what you're doing. It's probably the right way to think about it from a customer standpoint. Yeah. It's probably the right way for banks to be thinking about it too. I think maybe recently, recent decades, banks have maybe lost sight of the fact that they actually have kind of obligations to customers, and they should in fact be helping them kind of preserve and create wealth, as opposed to looking for ways to extract that from them. And it sounds like that's squarely in your thinking.
Definitely. And I was talking today to an audience of part bankers, part investors and stuff about one of the concepts that's really core to what we do, which is customer lifetime benefit, which is we talk about. So obviously we're sort of data and analytics shop at some level out of Capital One. Capital One talked a lot about net present value of customers. So that's net present value of future cash flow that you get from customers. So that's customer as value creator for the business. which is great and allows you to do some good scientific analysis of how much you're willing to pay for a customer and predict very accurately each member of the population and how profitable they're going to be for the bank, but neglects completely the other side of the trade. And, as Matt often refers to, that's Matt, my co-founder, one of the founders of Capital One. Actually, good business is a valid trade between a customer and a business, where the customer has significant benefit and the business has significant benefit. But businesses aren't often or not in the habit of measuring the amount of benefit that they give the customer. They're very good on measuring the profit they got out of the customer, and if they're really smart, they're good at measuring the future profit they're going to get out of the customer. If they're short-sighted, they don't. But they need to get a lot better at understanding that it's still a trade. And if you want to, continue to have and maintain a healthy and mutually respectful relationship with your customer, you've got to be contributing to that relationship at every level, just the same as you would be if it was a friend. If your friend was constantly taking your money, never paying for rounds down the pub, always leaning on your shoulder when they had an emotional event, they probably eventually would cease to be your friend. Similarly, your bank should think about it in the same way, which is measure the benefit, make sure it doesn't have to be in balance every day, but make sure overall we're maximizing customer lifetime benefit for our customers, as well as obviously making sure that the relationship goes two ways and that we're making money out of them, because we have to build a sustainable business at the end of the day. Otherwise, we can't help more customers.
Love that. 10 years from now, where will Tandem be?
One of the biggest banks in the UK. No, we hope larger than that. Internationally, we'll be able to roll Tandem out. Our mission refers to improving lives around the world rather than around the UK only. But I think there's people often ask me, like, what does the industry structure look like in 10 years' time? And I genuinely believe that a number of the large banks today will adapt and improve themselves. There are already a lot of leaders. I was talking to the guy from Swedbank earlier today. They've been running the same sort of agile stuff, talking about being more customer-centered, for 10 years, not just starting now, which I think some of the UK banks are. So I think there will be some very successful existing banks. I think some of the existing banks will die. Particularly some of the more, some of the mid-sized ones, even some of the large ones, will have disappeared in 10 years' time. And I think a small minority of the existing new entrants, and by the way, existing is probably the wrong word, of the new entrants collectively that exist today and that will enter over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, will have matured into industry leaders. And I think there's a little bit more capacity. Obviously there's sort of the 90% rule. One player takes 90% in search and in, social and other areas. I think banking, because of its national borders, which are a little bit stronger because of the regulation, will end up with multiple winners. So you'll still see giants appear, but giants appear over the course of more the 20, 30-year horizon in the sort of what I see as a digital banking space, which I think will be a big thing in 10 years' time.
Do you expect the incumbent banks that do transition and succeed in the future to kind of move toward a more Tandem-like model?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think all banks will be, well, okay, let's break it down, but in retail, I think they have to. In business banking, when you get up a little further up the spectrum, I personally think that some of there's a lot of space for, face-to-face, and there's a lot of space, there's value in those things. But I think it's really hard to see how, for a bank today that's struggling to deliver a branch experience that's even bordering on acceptable, that they can deliver anything to their customers in the sort of face-to-face space in retail, unless you're high net worth.
So PSD2 open banking are starting to kind of roll out, and people are kind of starting to take advantage of some of that architecture and what it has to offer. Your currently available app would seem to be kind of moving in that direction. How impactful do you expect that sort of regulation to actually be in practice?
So I think it's massive, but then again, I would say that because, we built our app from the start. The first thing we released is around aggregation, admittedly right now leveraging screen scraping rather than PSD2 because it's not been done in all ways yet, but we do already leverage some of the releases from March this year rather. So I think massive, but slower than people give it credit for. So, I sat down with Imran, who's running the open banking, about 3 days ago, and said, look, Imran, really, is this actually going to happen? Are they going to sort the shit out? And his view is, yeah, they are. How long it'll take for the payment initiation service provider type services to really take off, I think that's a really hard security challenge. I think that'll be slower. He's already said in January there will only be one type of transaction that can be initiated. It's like a one-off payment. It's not a faster payment, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this give me a while before we crack that nut, but I think account information service providers will be popping up pretty fast. And, HSBC's announced, put its hat in the ring. I think the challenge is how do people use that? How influential is it? But, it's been part of our strategy since day one. And actually, ironically, I built my last business or my last two businesses off the back of PSD1, which allowed a regulatory framework for remittances and actually drove a lot of the small mom and pop remittance businesses into the regulated system where they struggled a bit, and we were essentially aggregating those guys onto a back-end platform where they could build and expand their businesses essentially as agencies rather than as existing businesses. We bought some of them as well in order to expand the back-end platform, but that was a PSD1 driven business, and so ironically I'm pretty focused on building a PSD2 driven business this time around.
You must be anxious for PSD3 in due course.
Yeah, we'll see what that business looks like. I'm pretty busy right now with PSD2.
Nice. A few weeks ago, we had Shahar Bialik of Curve on the show. He's an entrepreneur that I believe you guys have invested in through Hexagon Partners. What did you see in Curve that made you invest?
Shahar? No, I think he's an awesome entrepreneur. He is, hard driving, hard working, understands tech. I think Shahar is going to be very successful. And there is an element of his business model which also echoes something of what Tandem's doing, which is bringing your, the whole PSD2, bringing your money into one place, bring all your cards in one place. And I think, he does see that as a stepping stone. But more than anything, no matter what life throws at Shahar, he'll throw it right back twice as hard.
5 businesses, that's pretty amazing. 4 exits prior to this. Wow. Are there any other businesses that you want to mention that you guys have invested in through Hexagon? Anything that the audience might be interested in?
Yeah, slightly random shout out for Albert, which is if any of the listeners are freelancers, it's kind of like Xero. It manages all your invoices and expenses and is moving towards sort of managing your whole, everything from tax returns to accounts, etc. It's not yet there, but it's a super exciting app. It's the only app in this category that's got like 700 5-star reviews, straight up 5-star. So that's a great app, really great management team, that I invested in very early on. Another one that I've been interacting with a bit recently, Akasa, which is a app that helps you split bills within the household, more aimed at students and that end of the market. Actually, another one, Yo-Yo, that's again more student targeted, that allows students a payments card on campus that then can be expanded out into deals with local retailers, and I think signed up like 10,000 new customers last week, or maybe the third day of last week. They're doing well too. So lots of great businesses around the fintech space, all have a bit of symbiosis with what we're doing. Good businesses.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure you're able to add some helpful value and insight based on all your experience to what these guys are doing.
Yeah, hopefully.
Before we go, I'd like to ask you a few rapid fire questions. What are you most excited about in FinTech and why?
Blockchain. And not blockchain, distributed ledger technology, because it is going to have a massive fundamental impact. I haven't quite figured out we're going to incorporate it in Tandem yet, but we will. It's one of those things like TCP/IP. We haven't quite figured out the ramifications yet, but I'm already excited. I've already got lots of ideas.
We'll have to do a round 2 at some point once you clarify your thinking. That'll be great. If you had it all to do again, what would you do differently?
You mean my whole career?
In Tandem or in life? You choose.
Always take more time out. No, I went to Bali for a year and a half before I started Tandem, post Azimo, which was awesome, really fun, great chance to connect with my family, my kids, which I'd love to do again. But obviously, I need to have a little bit more, do a little bit more work at Tandem to deliver our vision here. Yeah, I mean, in life, life's not about work. It is, which is part of the ethos to some extent we bring to our customers at Tandem. But work is, as an entrepreneur, work is probably a larger percentage of my life than it is for most people. But never lose sight of the fact that your health, your friends, your love, fun, all the other things that happen in life are probably the main thing.
What advice would you have for someone interested in starting a FinTech company?
Well, pick your segment carefully, tailor it to your end objectives. If you a nice example, if you really freaking want to sell the thing as soon as possible, pitch it into a segment like wealth management, where your potential buyers are some of the most moneyed funds and individuals in the world, and even if your business is a bit crap, you'll probably get a decent exit. If your objective is to build something world beating, well, make sure you talk to the guys who you're kind of beat the world with, your customers, and get involved and get them as involved as possible. So think about your objective, be really clear about what it is. You don't have to tell everybody, but set it out and then design around that.
Ricky, what's the best way for people to find out more about Tandem and connect with you directly?
Tandem, go to the website, give us a call. We're open all the time. Connect with me. You can send me an email, ricky.knox@tandem.co.uk. I'm not always the most immediate responder, but feel free to reach out. Connect with me on LinkedIn, but I generally sort through those like once a month or so. But that's a good background way to connect if you haven't got a particular pressing agenda. If you've got a business that you're in the process of founding or starting, definitely reach out and tell me you're looking for investment, and we'll get in touch straight away.
Nice. One of the things we didn't touch on, you guys have a great, I think you call it a co-founder network, basically. Individuals who have kind of signed up early on, been involved, contributing to kind of the shaping of Tandem, and who will presumably be early customers as you guys launch and grow. I suppose no doubt are already early customers on the app. And you organize some great events, I think, here at your headquarters, and you focus on specific topics. As one of your very proud co-founders, I'm on your email list, so I'm aware of this. And I think, there's been stuff around kind of sustainable housing in London, which is a market that's kind of notoriously difficult for people to buy into for the first time.
Yeah.
Some really, nice community building, but financially focused without being dull events. And it seemed like great ways to connect with you guys and the team. It seems like a very cool.
No, it's a great program. I mean, we closed it in May. We may actually reopen it for sort of people who are particular Tandem fans and have, referred a lot of customers or other stuff. So customers who essentially can step up into that co-founder program. We do still have a pool of shares where we need to allocate them out to our co-founders, which hopefully we'll do after this round. and there are additional ones in there to expand that pool. But we took the decision that, given that the name is co-founder, guys who actually
once you've launched, it's tough to take on.
Once you've launched, it's hard to take on too many new ones.
Sure.
So, but no, it's been great. Actually, they've contributed massively to the business. They've allowed us to, stay in touch. We do everything from like co-founder break at breakfast, which are get a group of them in here and run through, might be one product feature that we just really want to bust up and understand and run through prototypes and figure out what's going on with it. Through to we did a product naming session, which is fantastic, last week, where it's still on the wall actually, where customers are coming in and saying, how should we name our product? Should we name them at all? Should it all just be Tandem? Tandem as a service. So we had a big debate around that, and yeah, it's a great program, and it's been huge for us. It's a slightly esoteric thing to do, but I think it represents how importantly we place the customer in our ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that comes across. I think it's very cool.
Cool.
Ricky Knox, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thanks for tuning in to Rebank. If you like today's show, reach out. Follow us on Twitter at Rebank Podcast and join the conversation. For more on banking, FinTech, and the future, check out our regular content at www.bankingthefuture.com.